Silvio and I were commenting when we were preparing how it's actually less intimidating than we thought to sit on this side. But let's see, maybe it gets more. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful. Thank you, Transmediale, for inviting us. It's also wonderful to actually have an opportunity to meet in flesh Silvio after years and years of having this conversation. Because for years, Silvio was a tab in my browser. He recently also became a book on my bookshelf, and now he's also a person. So we thought we're going to have this conversation mediated through tabs, as we have been doing that for more than 10 years or so. So maybe you can kick us off.
Sure. I like this transformation of my own body into things. I hope not to become like a sort of fridge in your kitchen after some sort of unexpected mutation. Well, first of all, also a word of thanks to Transmediale, to all the people here, and a word also of sympathy for everybody who is involved, both as participants and as organizers, in making choices that are surely hard, and anyone has their reason. And I think I sympathize with this kind of difficult tactical moment. But as Dubravka was saying, like we have like this set of tabs. We have a lot. First of all, I wanted to ask: are you a tab person? Like you have like many, or just like you close the browser?
No. I discovered one tab plugin.
No, that's a mistake.
It's a mistake. No, I have these moments in which I'm like, why is a form from August 2022 still open in my thumb?
Okay, so we have two kind of people, because I close the browser down every single day and I start fresh.
Oh.
So this landscape is not my usual landscape. But let's maybe kick off with this image. I want to tell you why it's pretty special to me. It shows this gap between like this utopian politics and the kitchen sink. It can be read somehow judgmentally, no? In fact, this is like the Reddit page who says like, this is truly terrible. How can someone find this funny? Because like the interpretation could be like, sure, before thinking of high-level politics, just think of the kitchen sink. So it's a bit, the risk is like, entering in that Jordan Peterson way. But there is like a reason why I really like this image. And it's because, I think at times we all feel like this kind of detachment between like two levels of existence. And in my work, the perspective I wanted to somehow fuel and develop was like to look from the kitchen sink, to root yourself in the kitchen sink. And what does it mean? Not literally, again, like fridge, kitchen, but in the small manual kind of context of everyday life, the kind of small miseries. And I think that from that perspective, even like the utopian politics, let's say the big politics, change meaning to a certain extent, be they utopian, dystopian, radical, less radical. So what do you see in this image? Resonates with you, or?
No. What resonates with me is completely this idea of speaking from the kitchen sink. Mm-hmm. Kind of speaking from the ground up, from the below, from the struggle. Like I see that her utopian politics. I'm an architect, and I see those rendering, and I'm like, seriously, that's not. This is maybe mask utopian politics. So that this meme then opens up this question for me of like how the space mediates what we can do as collectives, how we live, and it speaks to me again how like there is so much layering to actually be able to read the kind of spatial politics and politics within the images which are projecting certain utopian narratives.
Right.
And that's like a super top-down thing. And I actually think if we are to we have to think the world from. No, we have to start bringing together and fight all the ways in which people have been for centuries fighting for a different world, from the ground up, from the below, which is also always connected of how we share the physical space, how we share resources, how we treat each other, how we treat non-humans, plants and species. How do we create imaginaries which are from below, from ground up? And because knowledge is also in the struggle, is from below. So in a way, for me, this is her dystopian politics. And then the kitchen sink, who opens up this question of what are the support systems we have for life to happen?
Yeah.
And then, of course, because if she needs to work and fit into that economy that supports that upper utopian politics, then your kitchen sink is like that, because your time is stolen by doing this. I also just really hate the gendered dimension here.
Yeah.
For the reference, because why is this not his kitchen sink and his utopian politics? Because that would, in a way, fit a little bit better with who is selling certain ideas what utopia is.
Exactly. I think these are the two kind of readings. If you look at judgmentally, the gendered part becomes annoying. But if you locate yourself in the kitchen sink, I mean, I also every night come back to my own kitchen sink. But let's check. Well, one topic that we are both dealing with is that of professionalization, anti-professionalization. What does it mean to be a professional? Is like professionals good? And in our conversation, we spoke. You mentioned this book, which I then had the chance to read. I mean, it's perfect. I love the cover with this "Get us out of this hell." Can you tell me why it's like a special book to you?
So it's and I guess you got to read it by downloading a PDF.
No, I got the old.
You got the old school.
Both.
I stumbled upon this book in 2009 when I was a researcher at Jan van Eyck. The way we all stumble upon books, someone tells you about what they're doing, and then I got the copy, and I started reading it, and I realized, so maybe, I don't know, for kind of space people in this space, not that space, people in the room, early 2000s were this, like we were saving Western European cities with pop-ups and allotment gardens. I mean, it was tail end of that. And then I started reading this book, and I'm like, well, this is actually a criticism of all these practices there, published in 72, but written in the 60s, by someone who was working in Boston and what then was called low-income bracket urbanism. And the photo is actually, it's a Penguin edition, the photo is of Trellick Tower in the construction and like Westway Road. With this kind of, we can spend hours just analyzing this image, connecting this image to Grenfell Tower fire and all these things and the financialization of space in London and all. So I was really like, okay, actually, how to make that plug with the previous interpretive tools that architects trying to be like planners, trying to kind of understand what professionals, this kind of expert can do, how do you embed with the communities that you're supporting and the limits of that. I felt I was trying to do these things and link up politics and space and laws and understand the spatial oppression and all this, and I was like, but how to link up with the previous histories and previous knowledge, because it's kind of pushed out, because this was never in any library of any architecture school I was studying with, which also opens up a different kind of... So I digitized this book. So that's why I asked you, like, because I kind of was like, okay, no, actually this book needs to be more accessible, so I digitized it. And few years later, someone was posting photos on, like Facebook all the time. Things pop up into your feed, and someone was posting photos from some conference in Vienna where this really revered professor was showing something like slide saying we need to go back to old. Some of the knowledge is fed in the 70s that has been pushed aside actually is important. And this book was on a slide, and I zoomed in and I recognized the LED lights imprint, and I was like, he's showing actually an image from the PDF I made, which kind of was this kind of a small thing of like, okay, yes, allegedly, I had allegedly digitized the book. Of importance of recirculating, reactivating knowledge, connecting the dots, and then in relation to that previous image we have been discussing, capacity to actually read beyond the image, capacity to read beyond the platform, capacity to read behind the user interface.
Right.
In order to capture, to understand structural thing and to actually become political subject in a way that one can actually link up with others in all the messiness. Because what I like with the kitchen sink metaphor is like life is messy. Fight for liberation is messy. And we need to deal with the messiness, especially us who are more on a theoretical academic side, because when you withdraw from life, things seem much neater. And how to be strategic and tactical sometimes is not always the way one imagines it's going to be.
Right.
But capacity to see beyond what is represented to us as the ideal is, and through the cycles of emergence in which we are embedded, and to differentiate between real emergencies for which we fight versus constant stream of like hooking up on scrolling and stuff, which we became conditioned through user interfaces without realizing what we are signing up for.
Which is a perfect hook, I think, to something that is embedded, is included in this book. And this quote, sorry, I didn't scroll down. Where was it? Where was it? So at one point, two things stuck with me of the book. The first is that the author calls like architects soft cops, which, I mean, it sounds a bit like the 70s kind of writing style, a bit like, the
So true today, so true today.
But also that there is a part dedicated to automated decision-making, and therefore computers. And there is this quote by Buckminster Fuller, who else, who says that you may very well appropriately want to ask me how are we going to resolve the ever-accelerating dangerous impasse of word-opposed politicians, so basically politics, and ideological dogmas. I answer, it will be resolved by the computer. So faith in technology, faith in all of that. So this allows us a bit like to move a bit to the platform space. So how do you interpret this quote? Do you think there is a bit of truth in that kind of idea that the computer would at least create another platform for political agonism or antagonism?
I'm old enough to remember that there was this belief, the networks will do this and do that. But I don't know, because I think this is situated. I think one thing, speaking from a kitchen sink, if we're using that metaphor today, is also refusing to think that it's possible to think without being situated. So maybe if cyber scene in Chile grew into what it was a promise to be, maybe if the corporatization of internet did not happen the way it happened, maybe I think we need, I mean, there is a space for the world we have to build has to, we won't be without technology.
Right.
But I think that the shift that for me is really about me trying to shift myself into that position in which it's situated.
Right.
I don't, under these conditions now as we live them, no.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Does this mean that the only future world we are building together and fighting for excludes computers, for lack of a better word? I can't imagine that, I mean, I can't imagine that scenario because of the complete exhaustion of the earth and resources and the limit of Moore's law and all this kind of compound thing. But I don't even think that's necessarily a conversation that we need to have because, you know, we have to, anti-colonial or partisan struggle, anti-fascist partisan struggle in Yugoslavia, where I was from, was also fought with all the possible arms you had to steal from those who were occupying you.
Yeah.
In order, and those who were insisting on hierarchies, and that if you're born as a poor working class, you're forever poor working class or poor peasant. So let's not reject at this moment anything, considering that we have to claim, and I also know I've been using this we, and who is this we is just, but yeah, yeah, I like to make things complicated.
Okay, well, who doesn't? Well,
complex.
Complex sounds more Buckminster-Fuller if we are speaking of that.
And I like to stay with the complexity.
Yeah. Well, I think...
what do you think?
I'm going to try to... well, of course, if I had to answer a few months ago, I think I would have given a different answer, which was like basically this, that the truth that I see in this quote is that at times, it actually feels like that the platforms, the social media, like really resonating with the framework of the festival this year, have created a sort of sandbox for political action, a sort of playground, which it felt for some people in some contexts really without consequences. Not like people could say the worst thing possible, and you know there wasn't any real world effect. So you had the sensation that politics was one among the cultural practices that the platform were able to digest. Actually, these days, I think it's very hard to maintain this position. But at the same time, I think, again, when you go home and you are in that process of scrolling, you have a feeling at times that, you know, like there is this sort of contentization of politics. And I'm reminded of Hannah Arendt, Vita Activa. No? There are like, the categories of her work are like labor, work, which means fabrication, and action. Action for her is politics, no? Like creating new beginnings by saying things. And the feeling is that the web has moved a bit like from the fabrication metaphor, in the sense that before you built your own page, you built your own corner, no? To one of action, linguistic action, which in Hannah Arendt's perspective was like the highest form of human expression, but in that context feels a bit, you know, again, inconsequential at times, not at all times. So I'm also reminded of an essay by Olya Lialina. No? She's often, you know, present here at Transmediale. The idea that the web moved from my, and therefore like to building something like the website for your dog, to me, expressing and expressing your own position. So this was a bit my reading, not just because of course the computer won't solve. I mean that's sort of obvious. So that was a bit the feeling. Okay, this is like just promotion, like purely promotional plug. No, but this may be to say something about about the fact that most of the ideas that I'm bringing here today are a bit like extrapolation of what I've written in this book, but also allows me to say something about my understanding of politics, at least in this book, and which I guess is a bit different from what we are trying to do today and what is needed today. And so this brings a bit of discomfort. So to understand the role of politics in design in this book, I had to sort of take a position in which politics was again seen agnostically, so to speak, in the sense that it's not superior or inferior to any other cultural practice, video games, I don't know, music playing, showing the bands you like, etc. This might sound cynical and obscene in light of these things, but it's the truth. I mean, it allows to also to see the role that politics play in the culture industry, because that's what I'm interested in, at least like for this work. That has been my focus. So I feel like I'm really the wrong person here today to speak about politics. So I wanted to be very clear of what I mean by politics in this conversation, or like in my recent work. So now the difficult question would be, I would be like, okay, so what's your understanding of politics? Maybe here, today, or in general, like how do you relate as an academic or as a researcher to politics, as an activist, as a militant, or how do you navigate that?
A curveball.
Yeah, sorry.
I would say that while it's, I would say that, see, speechless. To a certain degree, for me, politics is connected to the capacity to understand and read the world. And so what do I say? That is to say, like, I really like this, and I've been thinking, and it's one of our tabs, really concept of really useful knowledge.
But let's go there.
Yeah,
then.
so we can go there. But maybe before we go, yeah. But what I like, just like a detour, I'm a person of a lot of detours. A lot of thinking happens. A lot of, politics happens also. In office space, politics and organizing used to happen a lot around the water point or tea point and stuff, at these off times. Where you actually, in between, you actually start to understand your position. You actually start to address these that you're embedded into. And then through that, actually, you have, actually, these things are connected. And in order to change, we need to change all these things. So we need to kind of change politically the world in order to actually, so which I guess theoretically can be taught between practice and praxis as a conversation. Sure. I like the title of your book, What Design Can't Do. And we had amongst our one like that kind of, and you said soft cups.
Well.
Yeah. So like when you said like, and he describes architects as soft cups, and like, no, I like professionalization of architects and design is often like, it's not just soft cups, hardcore cups, you design a space. So when we were preparing for this, and you said what design can't do, there is this framework in UK called Designing Out Crime, which is basically, and this is a design council manual of how you can design out crime, which has been developed together with London Metropolitan Police. And the idea is that crime happens not because the country is structurally unequal, austerity measures hollowed out the society in UK for the last 12 years. UK government is supporting all the vicious and violent politics, both internally and externally. The country the ruling elites dream of empire and colonialism, and they draw borders across the world that are kind of perpetuating violence. So that's not the problem why there is crime. The problem is built environment of social housing. That's the crime. That's what that generates crime. Collective housing. That's what generates crime. Public space. Kind of idea that you can sit and hang out in a space unmonitored. That's what generates crime. So let's design that out.
You are evil, according to this layout. I'm
yeah,
the good one.
Yeah. Devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So professionalization of design makes a designer think that we can design out crime by drawing borders.
Right.
Which are not just related to nation states, but they are related to how we sit here and all this. And because I teach in the architecture school, I try to think through things which are related to kind of spatial literacy and space. That's why I really like really useful knowledge as a concept. So the problem with built environment is that it makes itself given. Mm-hmm. People decided, which is also the problem of nation states and stuff, they present themselves as given. Probably not to the people in this room, but to many people, we just adopt the forms of this is how you live. This is what apartments should be. This is the privately owned public space is normal because the state doesn't have money to build public spaces. We have to do that whole thing. So I've been struggling with that because it's like, no, actually all these things are constructed. These are all personal. Like the world is based on specific institutional design, which then builds a built environment, which builds imaginaries, which are processes of certain groups of people being in control of definitions. One of my favorite quotes is by Kwame Ture in time when he was Stokely Carmichael, which is in 1967 on the conference Dialectics of Liberation in London. He comes and says, well, I think you people are here like talking a lot about individual freedom, but I come from a position in which we don't have we have to talk about collective freedom. We are oppressed. We are, and then he talks about those who define their own power, that just defining what liberation is, for example, is actually a state. So a really useful concept became something, really useful knowledge became this thing through which I started to think about what is at stake. So it was developed, I got to know this concept through the exhibition curated by WHW, Curatorial Collective from Zagreb many moons ago in Reina Sofia Museum in Spain. But basically it's a 19th century concept developed in UK bottom-up by the working class and chartists in the moment in which mainstreaming of education comes, and then you have church and philanthropy developing useful knowledge, skills, practical skills, which today is like, let's teach everyone how to code and they will be able to earn enough money to pay rent. The problem is not that we have financialized housing market. The problem is that people just need to be reskilled different. So in response to that, people started to organize Marx reading groups or to teach themselves really useful knowledge, which is art, sociology, philosophy, those things that allow people to interpret the world, to understand the world better. And of course, you do that together because knowledge happens. It's not about I'm preaching to you. No, we are trying to struggle through these texts together, and we are trying to write poetry together, and we are through this actually understanding and acting and transforming, and then we are willing to put our lives on the line.
Right.
Because for me, what is also really important, because this kind of the problem of politics being reduced to sandbox, it's individualizing it even more. That with my likes, I'll change the world, which does not mean that we like. So many of the people I think things through together. I did meet on Twitter. I did meet on this. So it's not about that we can't use these places to recognize each other, to think together and to move. But I think it's important to understand how do we move out of the sandbox. And that for me is about there are things that are bigger than myself.
Right.
Jody Dean has this great, one of the people I think I heard speaking at Transmediale in this place, giving a lecture. So Jody has this book, Comrade, in which, she discusses that, you show up when you're a comrade, not an ally in which you center yourself. But when you're a comrade, you show up because you know that others expect you to show up, even though that maybe doesn't feel like you maybe want to sleep longer. And that's because the thing, there is, what are you willing to die for? Things are bigger than you, and you show up. Or like the kind of accomplice and stuff. So for me, this is a really convoluted way to tell you. I don't know what politics is.
Okay, I put you...
Maybe something that I have kind of now babbled for.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I can respond at least to, I'm sorry to have asked you, you know, like this kind of huge question.
But I can tell you, architects are cops.
Are cops, okay.
But we can also refuse to be cops.
Yeah.
And we can refuse to design prisons, but we can embed ourselves in, because we are also more than just professional architects. But in order for this to happen, I think we also have to understand to which extent architecture is a discipline that coded itself from Renaissance onwards, coded itself through whiteness as a production of the way of seeing the world.
Okay.
Because so much of what needs to change is about how we live and share this finite space of planet we have. So we need to rethink spatially our all relations. There are many ways, many knowledges that exist, not just outside of Europe, which is bad, but also within Europe that have been on the margins, that have been there in present, they have been there. So when I am anti-professionalization of architecture, I'm not saying that we don't, I think that we need so much of spatial thinking has to happen. It has to happen collectively. It has to happen differently. But to refuse that bourgeois, I'm like better than you because I'm an architect, because I recognized by a society that I'm an expert, through abstraction of oneself from life into this.
Even though, I mean...
It's about responsibility, because of course someone has to take responsibility for the things.
Yeah, but I mean, also, maybe it feels a bit different from the time in which the book was written, because like that kind of legitimization that comes with the role of the professional nowadays put to question. Now it's like we live clearly a crisis of the professions. Like, who believes in experts anymore? Now we see it every day. And architects and designers are like on the front line of losing legitimacy. Who thinks that an architect is actually an expert? So now the dilemma is sort of is sort of reverted in the sense that sure, once like back in the days, you wanted to break with expertise, top-bottom expertise, top-down. But now it happened in the worst possible ways, no? So there is this kind of struggle to both have like recognition of specific competences, and at the same time having a democratic, participatory approach in which you don't create once again like the like this kind of bourgeois paternalistic idea of the public. But anyway, otherwise,
otherwise we're going to stay with my tabs, my approach to internet history, and not yours. So let's move on.
Yeah. Only one comment about the beautiful idea of using the the spray for vandalism. That is like
which is a really useful knowledge. Because the capacity to see that this kind of design, which kind of points towards spray, points to racial and all this profiling, and not a neutral kind of position, is precisely type of legibility that I think needs to become much more present among people, especially since we live in this flattened image world.
Yeah. Maybe also to add about like this kind of reference of the design out crime. I mean, something that I've been very interested in is like the way in which, especially in the UK, where like design has been like praised a lot as like the harboring like the creative class. It's all about, the definition of the creative industries is from UK. Has become maybe less these days, but like design as a way to encompass other fields of knowledge, other genealogies. And I just wanted to say that I call this design panism, like this kind of totality. And I have like a huge chronology of all the people who said everyone is a designer, this kind of also democratic attempt to bring on the same level different kinds of people, but also that everything is design, like shopping is design, crime is a form. Well, there is a Marx little bit on how thieves are professionals. I remember this part because they are professional whose product is crime. No, it's like crime. What do they produce? They produce crime, and therefore they produce the police, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, a bit of...
Not all Marx, not all Marx, not all Marx. But Marx is a method, maybe not as every statement.
Yeah. No, but it was a funny part.
Yeah.
A bit of media archaeology. We spoke about the scrolling, etc. So I wanted to show you this. This is like from back in the days, from like 10 years ago, a plugin for like social media that would automate the scrolling. Now it feels of course a bit cheesy, etc. But I think it's nice to talk to you about this because there are like a lot of things that to me resonate with urban thinking, in the sense that to me the phase in like 2012 when I did it, 2011, was that the promise of interactivity of the web was a bit betrayed, that everybody was speaking about interactivity, but the unit of interactivity online was sort of gone, because who clicks anymore on links? Who does that actual sort of, like derive in the digital, polis? So the work was a bit like automating this thing that basically, like social media nowadays have become a form of broadcast. So who's broadcasting, and how do you think that, like as an urban thinker, what are your perception spatially of the web and platforms nowadays? It's just a shopping mall, as everybody say, or like, what is about those tactics to move? Are they somewhere? Is it about movement again? Or like movement is like you are stuck and things move in front of you?
So like spatially, like it's almost like if you're stuck and things move, it's a little bit like an escalator.
Like an escalator.
But escalator is kind of interesting thing to think with here, because escalator enabled shopping space to enlarge, but it's the only time in shopping when you do not shop.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I'm going with this. Because it's been a while since I actually thought about what do we do with digital, with kind of web space and stuff.
Because it's a lost, because it's, it's not, it's gone.
Yeah, it's, no. But what is interesting for me is that one of the most important ways in which I unlocked certain ways of thinking that I have been thinking them since actually for 20 years in relation to physical space was actually through understanding the ways in which information networks and digital networks were structured, and in the form of exhibition. So I think it kind of, I'm not 100% sure if I would be sitting here in this conversation if I had not had, by chance, or not by chance, by work of people from Novi Sad and kuda.org to bring the exhibition worldinformation.org to Serbia, to Belgrade and Novi Sad in 2003. The exhibition that maybe some of the people here in the audience remember, that was done by Konrad Becker and Felix Stalder, which brought kind of work of Critical Art Ensemble and Jody and all this kind of cutting-edge art that was dealing with actually not at that moment, or just before the kind of ubiquity of internet and communication. But it paired up exhibition also with basically exhibiting what are standards and the history and the politics, a military-industrial complex, and all these things were there in the exhibition. And that exhibition helped me actually understand protocols are designed, what contemporary art does, how do you all, it really was probably one of the strongest formative, which allowed me to, okay, so if things are, and it gave me a way to think with digital networks and the space of screen in relation to physical space, and allowed me to develop really useful knowledge.
Yeah.
In a ways in which I don't know how you create that outside anymore. Mm-hmm. But I know what's something that really, really annoys me?
What?
The term screen real estate.
Okay.
It's a little bit outdated. I don't know if that's still a term.
Screen?
Real estate.
Honestly, it's the first time I hear it. I'm embarrassed. So maybe good for you.
Because that was, I think that's maybe like, I don't know, 2012 internet, you know, how much screen time, screen space you have pixels, and then treating that as a real estate.
Dubravka, I'm afraid we are another generation. No.
So I was kind of thinking about how the important insight that digital space is finite also in various ways. And it's definitely finite, not just as a screen space, but with cobalt mining and all that. We should have undo it for a long time ago. That the terminology used to explain that there is just as many things that you can do, like as many ads you can sell on like still keep the content, but ads is real estate.
But at least that phase there, like when you had like the pixel, no, you would counting the screen, was material. There was something interesting about this. Was material and at least bidimensional. Nowadays, like the feeling is that there is a mono-dimensional, like the only activity that actually plays sense is like scrolling. And, for me that I've been into, creative coding, web design, it's kind of depressing with all the possibilities that there were. Having also a form of reshaping of the screen itself as a loss of that kind of complexity, of even like the spatial idea of like having windows open at the same time. But I mean, yeah, maybe it's like this is like interesting because like you in an article that I read, I think was on Eurozine, you basically say it's not that we have to look at the internet and apply the old metaphor of the city. We have to think of networks and rethink the city with what we now know of like the possibilities of networking. No? So it's like sort of shifting it back. I did a bit like the opposite, in the sense that I thought it was like useful to look back at assembly line modes of operation and how this like translate to platform activity. And this was inspired by Bernard Stiegler, who I think he was here some year ago, like rest in peace.
In power.
In power, in his case in particular. And the term that he uses is like proletarianization. And again, like some things are sort of obvious, that in the factory, in the assembly line, you are like repetitive gestures, no? But I think what is like less obvious, and that's the point on which Stiegler insists a lot, is the fact that there is an extraction of knowledge. Now, in the factory, basically one can read Taylorism not just as like bringing the stopwatch next to the worker, but also stealing the intelligence of the workers that they knew how to do their thing and bring into management. And in a way, our use of platforms, especially social media, has this feeling, the same feeling of extracting of general intelligence, because now you don't have anymore to think, okay, which website I open, how do I structure my daily, stroll or stroll, run, or like encounters there. And so it's like that's a bit like it's that tactical knowledge that I'm still fascinated by, and I'm a bit melancholic about this because, for example, 10 years ago there was this website. It was a blog called First Five. I don't know if you used to browse it, but basically the idea was that they were asking theorists, artists, designers, what were like the first 5 websites that they will open at breakfast. Now, that question seems also absurd to a certain extent, and that's a bit like the melancholic part that I see there, because I think that battle is lost, except maybe when you move like to actual spatial devices like VR, where they are
I don't
trying.
know. I think that we have to fight the battle in the actual physical space and not in and kind of this thing. Important it kind of made is that Taylorism the skilling of the worker and all this. That's also connected to plantation. That's also connected to enslavement and breaking the kind of whole capacity to hold knowledge, and trying to break that into menial work, piecemeal work, which kind of destroys the kind of, reduces complexity of humanities and various ways of being humans into that kind of a one menial labor.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's something that I think it's kind of important to understand. Partly is also, it doesn't start only in the factory floor. It starts in the factory floor when it kind of comes back as a boomerang, or it doesn't even come back as a boomerang because Taylorism was developed in the same physical space as certain things. But in these places from which we speak, we need to kind of understand that our analysis of proletarian, like all this, also is always connected to those who have been oppressed and excluded, because those are the ones with whom I want. These are the parts of the struggles I want to be part of. But I think we are slowly running out of time, or like we are almost out of time.
Shall we open for maybe? I mean, since I put it, I'm gonna just say something very brief about this. The sensation that I think it's felt like connected to this idea that politics becomes one content among many, and you have somehow physical manifestations of this idea, where like aesthetics becomes a bit of a politics becomes sort of an ornamental manifestation in cultural spaces. This, for example, was a sort of picket, fake picket, you might call it, here in Berlin at Republica in 2017. It also shows how, like doing this nowadays would be like super absurd. But in a way, I think politics has also this kind of, let's say, role as there has been a shift in which it becomes a sort of ornament for form, especially in design and art.
But maybe we can finish on, maybe like I show you.
Tell me what.
Like one of the things I open when I wake up, Ruth Wilson Gilmore Girls. Because I think that's it's not just because we are in a reunion and after 2 series and the whole kind of question of TV. I just love, I don't know if there is also a Twitter account which I kind of actually got to know this first. So this is an account on Instagram and Twitter which uses the fact that Ruth Wilson Gilmore, the absolute amazing thinker from the ground up, abolitionist geographer, discussing concept of abolition, which is change everything. It's not. It kind of comes from the idea of abolishing police and slavery and property, but it's not a police, but it's not about, it does not stop at saying we are abolishing, but it's about rebuilding the world. And with the beautiful concept of life in rehearsal, in which we actually live it as if we're already there, and we learn, and I just
prefigurative politics.
Partly prefigurative politics, but then there's just the fact that someone noticed that Gilmore Girls, Ruth Wilson Gilmore.
You cannot not do it.
You cannot not do it.
Yeah.
But, but then this embedding, hijacking meme, and hijacking this kind of incredibly problematic TV series to,
Sorry, I'm gonna go back.
and then embedding, but kind of piggy banking that at least to some of the people, the Gilmore Girls mean a lot, or something.
To me, surely does.
And then everybody changes on the process of building a movement. Kind of, okay, there's many ways, like a kind of ways of, a lot of quotes are the analysis, or like methods. I chose that we look like this, everybody changes in the process of building a movement, because it kind of has many elements of what I think, like, like politics, but also if you're building a movement, you're showing up, because there are things that are bigger than yourselves. Yeah. You're not a user. You cannot build a movement just online. You have to be in a physical space. As soon as you have to build you open up a question, where do we actually mean in these incredibly securitized and privatized cities?
Right.
And everybody changes. And I think that's the kind of endless scrolling. I don't think that ultimately changes. It gives me anxiety, and it definitely changes my mental health. But this for me was kind of
like a good synthesis.
To put things together.
Let's try to catch some question. I think, do we have time? Otherwise, it's, no? At least 2 minutes. Yeah. I don't know if there is, maybe. Otherwise, maybe there is no. No? It's, we have no time for that? Yes or no? No, we don't have. I'm really sorry, but
yeah.
So what do we do? It's like we open and.
I guess thank you for joining us in our sitcom. We will figure out how to do this again on some other couch. Thank you, Silvio.
Ben.